Hey, what's up guys? Tony here from LearnAutoBodyAndPaint.com and Paradice Garage. We're going to be talking about pros and cons of sandpapers, wet sanding versus dry sanding, because we're going to be custom painting this 2014, I believe, Honda Grom with probably, I think there's only like 2,000 miles on it. Nice, cool looking bike, but we're going to do a custom candy paint job on the flat raw plastic pieces, as well as our plastic pieces here. So we're gonna talk about plastic paint prep in this video and the pros and cons of sanding with wet versus dry. If you look in front of me here, we got blocks, okay? There's pretty much three ways of sanding. Okay, number one, hand sanding, using your hands. And there's a right and a wrong way to sand with your hands as well. There's block sanding, okay? And then to get a straight, nice finish. And there's also sanding with machines, tools. This is a DA called a dual action Orbital sander. It doesn't just turn, it vibrates, dual action. Here's one from Kovacs, a couple $100 for this piece right here. This one is from Harbor Freight. I think it was like 30 to 50 bucks, give or take, okay? And I really recommend, instead of using sticky paper for these, you want to get the Velcro. Why? Because if you're doing any kind of wet sanding with the Velcro, you're not going to have an issue. Now, are all of these okay for wet sanding? I've never had an issue. They have specific wet sanding DAs that you can get called the Bug, the Water Bug, and probably some other brands out there now, but I just use my regular DA for wet sanding if I have to, because you're not, you know, drenching the whole thing in water. You basically just got just the pad's pretty much wet while you're sanding. So it doesn't do any damage. I haven't had any damage using my DAs as a wet sander when needed. So let's actually step back and let's talk about sanding, prep sanding. What I like to do is finish sanding with 400 grit. And now this is painted with base coat clear coat, and you can see the clear on here already. Actually, clear coat, you could just sand it and paint right over it. You don't have to prime it. Let's just get into hand sanding with this, and I'm just gonna go over the wrong way to do it, okay? So this is a piece of sandpaper, 400 grit I'm using. This is another super acrylic sandpaper by Kovacs. It's a very, it's a Velcro pad, but it's very soft, which is cool because you can use this type of sandpaper and all kind of little grooves on your hand sanding and whatnot, and it really comes out really, really nice. So here's the wrong way to sand if you're using your hands. Here's the wrong way, all right? So the wrong way, and I'm using, I'll use this sandpaper, is to hold your paper kind of like this. You can use flat paper as well. I have some in the toolbox, but we're just gonna use this. The wrong way is to just go like this and stay in one spot for a long time, because look, you're actually putting your finger indentions in the paint. You go too long like that, it's not good because you don't have a flat surface. So if you're gonna be any type of flat sanding, you always wanna use the palm of your hand. That's the correct way, okay? Or if you're gonna have to use your fingers, you're gonna have to go in a motion kind of like this, like a circular motion to get it nice and flat. Again, this is what I call flat sanding, when you take out the paint texture and orange peel. But the other way to really get it nice is just to use your whole palm, and you could just sand it like this. You can see how just by going like this with my palm here, right, it gets flat. We don't have any grooves. That's the wrong thing you want to do, is to just put pressure with your 3 fingers and sand like that. It's no good. So that's number one. And the pros and cons of dry sanding versus wet sanding is that if you're dry sanding, some of the cons are it gets very dusty, okay? You get dust all over the place. But the pros of dry sanding is that you can see right away what you're cutting. You can see that it's coming out flat and whatnot. All right, so let's actually play with a little bit of wet sanding. Let me show you what I mean. So dry sanding, immediately, if we sand like this, if we sand flat, you can see immediately that it's nice and flat. This is a good texture to paint over right here when it's flat, okay? Not kind of like in here where you can kind of see some of the paint texture. It's not fully like a matte color like in here. So this is basically ready for paint right here. You could shoot single stage over that or a base coat, clear coat right on top of that. You could shoot white on top of that. You could shoot black on top of that, red on top of that, and you will cover. Now, let me just actually, we'll get the same paper because we covered the dry sanding. I'm gonna wet it. And I just have a little bucket of water here. You could, you know, people say, hey, you could put a little dish soap in here so it doesn't cake up the pad, but it really doesn't make a huge difference. It's up to you if you want to do that. If you want to put dish soap in your sanding, in your water, put a couple of drops in, but you're not gonna overkill it. Okay, now we're gonna come over here and we're just gonna wet sand. You can't really tell too much that it's cutting, but you can tell when it doesn't beat up and dry up. You can kind of see how here is beating up. Here, right, we got, it's pretty much still wet. So that means we cut pretty well. Let me get the chamois. You're gonna always want a chamois. So you can kind of chamois that away and you can see that, oh yeah, it is sanded in here. So the pros of wet sanding, basically you get a cleaner, I think you get a cleaner cut, your sandpaper lasts longer, and you know, you got less dust. And this is sanding by hand. That's pretty much what it boils down to. So small parts like this, I normally like to just wet sand by hand, just like how I showed you right over here. And not dry sand, I like to wet sand by hand. But bigger parts, I can use the DA, and we're gonna use the DA super quickly. I think we have 400 on here already. So this is the vibrating motion of a dual action. So let's go ahead and just sand this quick. Sands it super quickly. You know, in fact, I might even just DA this thing. I didn't cut through, this is just more of like a nick. If you cut through, then I would recommend priming over raw plastic. You don't have to go crazy, you don't have to use an epoxy primer, you could just use a 2K filler primer, just hit that area. I know it's a pain in the butt to mix primer up and do it, but you can also get the aerosol cans like Spray Max, pop it, it's a 2K filler primer, just hit those spots, because you're gonna have more areas when you're working on a whole bike, you know, that you're gonna have to prime and touch up. All right, so that's using the DA, and with the DA, you can also use, right here I have no pad on, it's just my my backing and the paper, but what you could do is put an inner surface pad that looks like this. It's a lot, you know, it's soft. They also have harder ones. This is, you know, pretty firm, but something like this, you can put on as an inner surface pad, like that, and then you put your pad on. Now that allows you to basically get in harder areas like this because of the foam. It kind of cuts in. You see that? You see how it easily kind of gets in there? If you see white like this, that means it's clear coat. So you know this is a base coat, clear coat paint on here. Okay, so that was with the DA. I showed you DA sanding, and then again, if you wanted to do DA with wet sanding, you absolutely can. You just wet it down like that, no problem, and just... That's what it looks like. Go ahead and get the chamois. In the end, it pretty much comes out the same from dry sanding. But I do believe, for me, I think wet sanding gives you a cleaner cut. And then once you chamois it, you wash it, you can see exactly how it's looking. You know, there's pros and cons of both, again, like I said. And in certain situations, you want to go with wet sanding versus dry sanding. And this is the things that we cover and we talk about more in depth in Learn Auto Body and Paint VIP. So we did that. So the last phase is basically using blocks. And on a panel like this, I wouldn't really be using blocks because there's so many curves to it, you know, and indentions and all of that. It's more of a hand sanding panel. But if you're using a block, I wouldn't be using a big hard block like this one here. I wouldn't be using something like this. It's really huge. I would be using more of a thin block, and this is all from Durablock. Small thin block like this. All you do is get your paper, and they also have sponge blocks like this. It's a sponge block. All you do is get your paper like this, and it sticks right on top of it. Actually, this one right here. This is a very good pad. I got this from Kovacs as well. You just stick your paper on, and this is a very good hand block because with the foam, right, it allows you to easily get, the corners and kind of like that. You know what I mean? Super easy. Be careful, you really don't want to cut through the clear coat and get into the base coat. If you see like little chips like this, if you can feather it out super easy, quickly like I did here. See, that's not bad. I didn't cut through to the plastic, I cut through to the base coat. All right. And you can also wet sand with this. Same thing, you just wet it. Wet sanding, the only difference is you just wet it. And I can like go in here and you could just kind of go up like that. You always want to cut on an angle too. Kind of go with the panel. You can see how this ridge comes up like that. Don't go like that. Kind of go, always sand with the panel. Okay, like that. All right, and that's pretty much it. And to really see how I tell that this thing is sanded is that it doesn't beat up and dry kind of like this. If something's not sanded, it'll look like that. But if it's sanded, it'll look like this, where it's just kind of caked up. If I do that, you can see that it's sanded. You can see if in here, you can see kind of like a shininess to it, right? It's not sanded, so you want to make sure that you get this. And then what I would do, like I said, is just use your hand. You could use your finger, okay, and just go like that. That's what I would do for something like this. See, use just a disc like this, and just go like this. And then I would do this to get all in here as well. Okay, we're gonna be taking these panels apart anyway. So in the next video, you're actually gonna see me doing a lot of demo work, basically just sanding. But in this video, I wanted to talk to you while showing you at the same time. These 3M pads, there's a red one, a maroon reddish one, and a green one. The green one is similar to a 600 grit. The red one is similar to like a 400 or a little less than that grit. The green ones are finer. And I don't use these too much. Some people use these. I don't like them because the scratches are inconsistent. There's chunks. If you look closely, there's chunks of the abrasive texture in here. It's just not, it doesn't give you, like we can test them out right here. It's good for quick sanding. It doesn't give you a consistent scratch. Some scratches are deeper than others. It's not like using a good sandpaper. So this is good for scuffing something up quick, and then what I like to do is go over it with a sandpaper. You do have some chances because of the deep scratches, right, that your metallics kind of fall into it and you're gonna see like scratches through like a metallic paint job or whatever. Anyway, it's Tony here. I hope you learned something about this. This is just a quick little video kind of teaching you the pros and cons and showing you some demos of wet sanding versus dry sanding. We're gonna be doing a lot of work to this little mini bike project here. I'm gonna be doing full sanding. So the next videos you're gonna see me on YouTube, we're gonna be sanding everything down, getting it ready for paint. Then we're gonna get into the candy custom paint job on this thing. I hope you like it. So I hope you liked the video. It's Tony here from Paradice Garage and LearnAutoBodyAndPaint.com. If you want to get more auto body training, like I said, we've been teaching people for over 10 years on the internet, learn this skill so they can open up their own body shop, custom paint their own cars, gain the personal fulfillment and pride of taking a beater and turning it into like a dream car that you've always dreamed of. Check out LearnAutoBodyAndPaint.com. Click the link right over here to get that free training, free video training, and also the links down below. Comment, let me know, give me a comment. It's Tony here from Paradice Garage. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. By the way, if you want to learn more about all of this, all you got to do is click the link right over here to go to LearnAutoBodyAndPaint.com to get a free auto body manual, some free video trainings, or click the link down below. If you have any comments, feel free to just comment down below. I will try to help you out here. All right, so let's Yo quiero Taco Bell.